Okay, so the claim I'm going to be responding to is transracial adoption will not cause the adopted child to have racial identity and self-esteem challenges, but instead cause positive outcomes. If you guys don't know, the definition for transracial adoption is the joining of racially different parents and children together in adoptive parents. The advocate began her claim by opening with an attention device, which I will remind you of. It began, since the day her mother brought her to the United States from Guatemala, her mother told her that she was adopted. Even though she knew this since she was very young, it was not until she was at the age of 4 that Elena understood what it really meant. Elena was watching the popular children's show titled Sesame Street one day, and specifically remembered that the mother had dark-colored skin, and so did her newborn. Elena immediately ran to her mother, who was white-skinned, and held up her arm next to hers, and said, "My skin is different than yours." Why? Her mother's reaction was shocked, because she thought that Elena would not mention her race until she was much older. For my refutation to this opening statement, I made some research, and I found out that where the site that this attention device came from was not to show, was not like quite good evidence to show that transracial adoption will not cause harms to children, because the whole thing that the page was talking about was about the long-term effects that it would have on children, and how they have problems in society by looking at their skin different than their parents. So her secondary claim read that studies prove that issues such as self-esteem and racial identity will not affect the adoptive child. To this, I made some research on her evidence, and I saw that the evidence that she was using to support this claim was the study made since November from 1982. And I thought that it was very weak, and it does not support her evidence very accurate, because it's such an old study that it doesn't really, things have changed now, so it doesn't really apply to the time we are in now. Her secondary claim number 3 was about how studies prove transracial adoption that has a positive outcome towards society. So this one was about her studies, about more studies, and about how it has more positive outcomes towards society. To this one, I also made some research, and I found out that the evidence that she was using was from Calvin Mowawa, and it was named Beliefs and Attitudes About Transracial Adoption Among a Sample of South African Students. And this study that she used was an inferential statistics, because it was only applied to South American students. And what she was using this evidence to support was that it has good outcomes in society, but the studies had nothing to do with children that were adopted. It mostly had to do with children and the color of their skin, and I thought that it was very inaccurate based on the source that it came from, which was from South Africa, and it did not really apply to most of society as she was making it sound. So I hope now, based on my claims, that you know that her proposition had a lot of flaws, and that transracial adoption is not very good, and does not only have positive outcomes in society, but it also has negative ones.
All right, well, you did remind us about what the claim was, and it was a complicated claim. You spent a lot of time talking about the attention device, which I'm not exactly sure what that gets you in the long run, what your point is there. The idea that somebody might notice the difference between their characteristics and those of their parents, that seems to be a suggestion that, in fact, there may be a problem here. I think you could probably turn the example into an issue that would demonstrate that there is a negative consequence also to transracial adoptions. So, your argument here that it's not clear that it applies is an interesting one, but I'm not sure that it advances an argument that you're making the way you presented it, or that it refutes an argument that the advocate presented. You signposted the secondary claims pretty clearly. That's fine. You challenged the advocate's evidence on the first point by saying that the study's from 1982, which does certainly sound pretty old. That's 31 years ago. The question is, have things changed? It would seem to me, just based on the way social systems have changed, that they would be less likely to have even any impact than they did in 1982. In 1982, maybe transracial adoptions might be dangerous, or have some problem, and this study says that they didn't in 1982. What's the likelihood that things would have gotten worse for transracial adoptions in the last 31 years? I think that you need to have some explanation about why that would be the case, and you don't. And so I'm not sure that your challenge here really is very effective on that point. Signpost on the second point was pretty clear. You challenged the advocate's study by, it got a little confusing. It sounds like it's South Africa first, then South America, and your criticism seems to be mostly that it doesn't apply to adoption. And I think that's the key point here. You need to be able to explain, give us the segment of the study itself that talks about what it really is attempting to measure and whether or not it has any application to adoption, because I don't know. I think your inference seems like a reasonable one, but you need to be able to explain that and prove it a little bit more clearly. You end your argument by saying that transracial adoptions have both healthy and negative outcomes, but I didn't hear any negative outcomes being suggested, and there wasn't any evidence to cite that. All right, thank you.